As a company who's building surveillance systems through cameras, have you put a thought process around where do you want these surveillance systems to be used, or where do you want these surveillance systems not to be used?
We don't see ourselves as a surveillance system. We purely see ourselves as what data can we provide to our customers to make their jobs easier. So for example, if somebody starts asking us for racial data of people entering their stores or on their factory place, or anything which can be more discriminatory, right? Or which can stereotype people into groups, we don't provide that. If you have a completely ridiculous idea, most people will be like, tell you all the reasons why it's going to fail. If you can create a digital footprint of everything that's happening in a factory or in a logistics warehouse or in a hospital or in a retail outlet, then what can you do with that data? Our AI works really well. We have more than 1 billion hours of video data which we can fine-tune all our models on. So we don't need a human in the loop to do these detections. There has to be a person, a safety officer, who's deciding things. Okay, these are the constraints within which the agent will operate. Things that 5 years ago would require a team of engineers and a supercomputer or a much more powerful computer could be run on a MacBook Pro by a single engineer using just probably a couple of hours of code.
Hello, welcome everyone to the next episode of the AIM Media House podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us the co-founder and CEO of Spot AI, Rish Gupta. Hi Rish, how are you doing today?
Good, Kashyap. Thanks for having us.
I was reading about you for the past couple of days, and I've seen that you have a very interesting journey in terms of the career. What gave you the idea of Spot AI is something which I'm obviously keen on learning. But how has your overall experience been in the Silicon Valley, building startups and doing some of these things, and what are some of the lessons you've learned along the way?
Yeah, it's been an epic ride, like in all dimensions. If you think about it, it's a 7 square mile city, which is probably driving most of the innovation in the world, right? Every time I look at the city, it is just amazing to realize that most of the digital products that we use, from whether it's Twitter or X or Google or kind of came within an eyesight distance or within like a driving distance from here. So it's pretty epic to be a part of that. The second thing which makes it really exciting is, I think if you live in other big cities in the world, whether it's London, New York, any other big city, if you have a completely ridiculous idea, most people will be like, tell you all the reasons why it's going to fail. Here you're going to meet people who will be like, oh yeah, can you think bigger? And that's a kind of a push which makes this place really exciting. And plus it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. It is beautiful. Yeah, great weather. Yeah, gorgeous ocean. Yeah, the sequoia trees. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the weather, especially because it's too cold on the East Coast. Yeah. So I do agree with that. Spot AI. I want to talk about the idea behind it, right? What was the thought process? What were some of I think everybody takes some kind of inspiration from some kind of problem statement that they have been solving in their previous role.
Yeah.
Some of these things. What was your journey towards thinking of and what you had envisioned Spot AI? Almost every time somebody envisions a startup, it doesn't always materialize into the same thing. Yeah. You always keep adapting with whatever technology is surrounding and evolving around you. What was the initial thought process? How did it then become what it is today?
Yeah, I think there are 3 dimensions when you think of a startup. There is the technology wave that you want to ride, which I think is the most important dimension to think about. And then there's a distribution wave that you can create. And then there's a product form factor that you will create to make these 2 things happen, to bring these 2 things together. The technology wave that's happening, the distribution wave that you can create, and then you create a product wedge to make that happen. So what I mean by that is, for Spot, it was very clear when we were starting out, 3 of us, the clear indication was 2 things in technology were going to be really, really true. And there were enough proof points that you could project it outwards. One was the edge computing stack was going to get better and better. So this is, even in 2019, 2018, 2020, you could see NVIDIA GPUs getting better and better, and you could deploy more and more capacity on the edge. And they were almost doubling every year. So you projected 10-year outwards, and you have like 1,000x improvement on something. And then second, AI models were getting phenomenally better. So things that 5 years ago would require a team of engineers and a supercomputer or a much more powerful computer could be run on a MacBook Pro by a single engineer using certain, just probably a couple of hours of code using open source models. So you knew the state of AI is just increasing at a really rapid pace. And you project that again for 10 years, and you're like, oh, this is not going to slow down. It's just going to get better and better. And we've seen that happen in the last 2 years in an accelerated form. So once we had those, it was like, okay, what is the most complex data source that we can apply this to? And the richest data source available is video. And video is interesting because you cannot put all the video in the cloud because the bandwidth is just not increasing fast enough. So that gave us kind of this idea of that we can make video data really, really useful for companies. And then it was about, okay, who do we make it useful for? And that was, if you think about which kind of industries have the highest, which has come to the distribution point, which was which industries have the most amount of lack of visibility into their operations. And so if you're in a digital realm, so if you're in a pure IT world, most of what you're doing kind of stays on some kind of a computer code or some kind of a, metadata is lying on the computer. But if you're in a physical world where things are moving, objects are moving, trucks are moving, all kinds of pallets and forklifts and stuff, you don't have digital footprints of that. But cameras allows you to create a digital footprint of that. So so that kind of came to the conjunction of like there's this video data which we can make immensely powerful for this multi-trillion-dollar physical economy. And so that was the idea, that make video data really incredibly useful for the physical economy. And then there was a whole bunch of layers of like how do we productize that over the years, that sustained form factors. As more technology become more mature, it has led to more and more interesting products.
Yeah, I think surveillance, video surveillance, especially from the perspective of using it for very viable and meaningful ways, has been a problem statement that many have always tried to solve. We have put humans behind to observe security footage every now and then, and there are big casinos, big manufacturing plants where this has been surveillance has been used. What does Spot AI bring into that equation, right? I really want to understand what is proactive video intelligence versus a traditional surveillance intelligence and a human sitting behind those sets of cameras.
Yeah. So a few things. We never thought of ourselves from day one as a surveillance company, or that the market that we're going after is video surveillance. I think that was the first market when IP cameras or cameras became famous in the 90s and 2000s in businesses. That was the first use case that people deployed it to. We thought of it as I said, because of the AI and the edge compute stack, this is one of the richest data sources. And if you can create a digital footprint of everything that's happening in a factory or in a logistics warehouse or in a hospital or in a retail outlet, then what can you do with that data? So video is just a source of data. And then you kind of think about how you can empower, whether it's their operations team, whether it's their safety teams, even security teams, right? So that's how we have approached the market. And the difference that is meant is it's not so much about, okay, can we prevent certain things from happening? Yes, we can. But the approach has always been, what data would make the person's job better? So if you are an operations team in a retail outlet, if knowing the number of transactions you're having, or how many aisles does a normal person walk through before they make a transaction, or the number of people who are entering into your store at different hours of the day, how many times is a person at the kiosk when there's nobody behind the counter to help them? These are all kind of data points that makes it incredibly valuable. Same thing for a safety officer. It's not just about, okay, yes, there's preventative aspect rather than reactive aspects, but it is about unearthing. Like a typical safety manager can go and walk around the floor and get a sense of what's the safety compliance. But in cameras, you're getting 24/7 data on where are the biggest risks in the factory, which parts of the floor tends to have the most problems. And yes, that leads to some proactive measures which people can take to avoid safety incidents. But it also means that you can use the data to lower your insurance cost. You can use the data to actually measure safety across different factories and create metric-driven decisions for your business. And that's what we mean when and the way Spot has been different from other camera companies is by being about installing cameras, which is what they were about, like 70-80% of their revenue comes from hardware. the emphasis is on how many pieces of hardware can I sell. So can I sell you more cameras? If I've done maxing out cameras, I'm going to sell other surveillance tools like widgets, whether it's alarm systems, door access control systems, etc. For us, it's been, okay, now that you already have these cameras, how do we make these cameras incredibly useful? So we're not in the business of trying to sell you more cameras. We're in the business of making these cameras incredibly more useful. So our whole technology stack has been taking the compute away from the camera, centralizing the compute, so you can bring any camera onto the platform, which was very, very different than other camera manufacturers. And then building a whole data pipeline, which is on maximizing the value that this data can bring. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. I think what we have tried to understand is the evolution of your thought process into the product, and now how we have scaled, which is very, very important. As a media company, we are always we always have a theme of the year. This year it's agents, right? So I want to slightly move the conversation to the agents. Obviously every company is starting to think about bringing in agents. Last year it was about generative AI. The year before that it was scalability through MLOps. The year before that data engineering. There has always been consistent theme, and then probably companies in state of the art startups like Spot AI are always looking to kind of adapt to the newer market. When agents started becoming a big thing, Salesforce hosted an event right here. Their entire theme was around AI agents. Snowflake and Databricks did an event. They also were only talking about AI. I was at NVIDIA GTC and listening to Jensen's. I think he mentioned AI several times, AI agents several times. One of the things that I want to ask you is there a viable use case that you have identified, especially from a very agentic AI perspective, where you can deploy agents to do this kind of surveillance which is there? And how are you looking at it? How do you kind of integrate into the existing software and existing product that you've already built? And how does that overall improve the product?
Yeah. So we actually started looking at how do we apply agents into the video space almost about a year ago. Mm-hmm. And we're probably the first company in this category to start thinking about it and launch products. So last year, so if you go on any search engine, who builds video AI agents, Spot AI will be the number one kind of result that you will get. And that's because we were the first ones to do it, probably still amongst very few who do it well or do it at all. So the way for us agents come to be is very simple. So if you think about it, there's cameras. We're a camera agnostic platform, which means if you're a big, large company, you can bring any brands of camera across your different locations onto one single AI platform. This AI platform is completely open, which what it means is your video data platform can connect to your ERP system, can connect to your point of sale system, can connect to your access control systems. So that's the business intelligence stack, right? And video data is a part of that. And right now we're putting this data in terms of application layers. So whether it's desktop, mobile phones, browsers, whatever, you're getting all the data that's coming out from your factories, from your warehouses, retail shops, XYZ. But still a human being has to look at this data and make decisions. So a safety officer still has to look at saying, okay, these are the 6 safety incidents. This is the report I want to generate and submit internally. Or this is the safety score that I want to apply to this person. Or these are the set of recommendations I want to give so-and-so person about how to improve their safety standards in the office. So there's still a lot of human work that has to happen after the data comes to the person. So the beauty of the agentic workflow is now we're able to go to safety teams and be like, hey, you just give it a goal, saying, I want to reduce safety incidents in this place by 10%. And it's going to start giving you a whole set of reports and analysis and recommendations. You can also automate it to say that, okay, when this person does something wrong, this is the kind of warning you want to send them automatically, or this is the kind of coaching you want to send them, right? So the whole process that a human would consume the data and then decide the next steps of action for a goal, you're abstracting that away and you're saying, you just come up with end goals, whether it's improving safety, whether it's making somebody much more safety compliant, whether it's reducing the operational time between two processes, whether it is making a property more secure, saying that, okay, I don't want people loitering outside my property after 10 p.m. I don't want tailgating to happen. And let the agent decide the next set of steps and drive you towards a goal. So it completely augments and supplements their team to do just a lot more. So it's almost like you have another team member which is working alongside you, which is kind of what's happening in the digital realms of an agent. So if you think about Cursor on the engineering side, or very different other kind of tools which people are using. They're just augmenting what people are doing. And that's what we're seeing in actual physical world, whether it's safety teams, security team, ops teams. Yeah.
Yeah. In conjunction to that, you brought the conversation to also the human in the loop argument around it. Do you, as a founder, envision your AI or AI in general to not have human in the loop over a period of time, or do you always envision the use cases for Spot AI's application to have human in the loop at least the end, decision making process, and also kind of making critical decisions in sensitive areas where surveillance can be deployed?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think just to clarify, human in the loop within the industry can be used in two different ways. One is, do we have human in the loop within Spot who's tagging your data and making things happen? So is our AI just functioning automatically, or are there actually people sitting in some remote office tagging a bunch of data? So our AI works really, really well. We have more than 1 billion hours of video data, which we've fine-tuned our models on. So we don't need a human in the loop to do those detections. Then it comes to the decision-making at the customer end or the enterprise end. Do we need a human in the loop to define and design the parameters of what this agent will do? 100%, right? So it is not an open-ended thing. You just start a safety agent and just be like, go ham at it, right? There has to be a person, a safety officer, who's designing thing. Okay, these are the constraints within which the agent will operate. These are the behaviors that I really want to detect and understand about my factory. These are the kind of actions that I allow, and these are the kind of actions that I don't allow this to happen. And the agent is going to produce certain kind of results. And it's no different than any other team member that you would look at the first month of results and 2 months of results. Then you're going to fine tune or your instructions to this agent, or you're going to fine tune the number of behaviors you want to track, or the set of actions that you want it to take or not take. And that will continue to evolve in the company's evolution. So yes, on the customer end, it is not a replacement of human beings. It is just taking them and making them a lot more efficient. The example I think of it, if you were an accountant in the 80s or 70s and you were doing a lot of all the receipts are coming manually to you, you're putting them all in a file, then you're making a file which calculates the total outgoing expenses, incoming expenses, etc. Then you have computers, your internet, so everything is now Expensify, QuickBooks, Intuit, whatever. You're using different set of tools. To an accountant doesn't have to do that. The accountant job is not redundant. The accountant is just doing higher order stuff, where they're doing more FP&A, or they're going to the different business leaders and going through the expenses. So you just take a lot of work away. Second, what you do is, for example, I'll go back to the safety example. If a safety officer has to do a manual check of safety practices, they can walk around the factory floor maybe once a day, normally once a week, and they go and check everything on a piece of clipboard or paper or some file. They would love to do it more often, but there's a physical limit to how much they can do it. But if you have 10 cameras around and they can all look your entire factory, or 100 cameras around, you can have this safety report running once every hour. Yeah. So just the fidelity of data that you can collect just becomes immensely more powerful to that human being, right?
A slightly more difficult question. Surveillance has always been a topic of contention throughout. Especially there have been cases of misidentification or surveillance being used for this thing. Obviously, there are some beautiful use cases as well that come, and technology is, while not the medium, it can be used for nefarious reasons, etc. While at the same time, it can be used to avoid accidents in a large plant. And I'm sure that you get this question a lot, right? As a company who's building surveillance systems through cameras, what are some of the... Firstly, have you put a framework or have you put a thought process around where do you want these surveillance systems to be used, or where do you want these surveillance systems not to be used? And in a wider context, how do you always ensure that it is used always in a more productive way than in some of the use cases which are now been banned?
So here's first of all, I think I started with this, that we don't see ourselves as a surveillance system. We purely see ourselves as what data can we provide to our customers to make their jobs easier. Now, so once we look at that, then you can start a prism of saying what data is typically more useful to customers, what data could be used in more harmful ways. So, for example, if somebody starts asking us for racial data of people entering their stores or on their factory place, or anything which can be more discriminatory, right? Or which can stereotype people into groups, we don't provide that. So, can AI potentially detect that? Yes, but we're not going to explore that. We're not going to expose that kind of data to our customers, right? The second is, if you are a private customer who's walking into a store and you have not consented to having your personal information be available. So we're not going to link you up to an external database, look at your face and say this person is person X who resides at this location, who drives this car for marketing purposes or other purposes. So again, we're not going to link people to external marketing sort of databases to identify you and then target you through ads or anything else. Again, that's the data that we feel is reaching the code of conduct of privacy, right? So those are the kind of examples of what we've thought through and saying we're not going to do. Then there's data which is extremely helpful, right? Which is, did you, if you are doing an X job, right? And you're supposed to be in these locations from safety perspective or customer service perspective, were you at those places or not, right? There are actions that you're supposed to take to make your job be more successful. Are you able to do those actions well or not? And we are able to provide the data to you. So that's the kind of data line. And then there is the whole implementation line. Okay, even if you have this data, how do you implement it within an organization? So we go with 3 T's, which is look for transparency, look for training, and look for trend.
Right. Okay.
So transparency is we make sure that through various organization connections that the data is not just to some people at the C-suite level. When we go in, we make our system available to almost everyone in the organization who can benefit from it, right? So your team members, so you as a person, it's not just your boss has this data and you don't. You as a person on this floor also has your safety data, also sees when you're making those mistakes or when you're doing some really amazing things on the safety thing, or you're doing some amazing things on the operation side, right? So the data is available both ways, so it's transparent. The second is training. I think all organizations, we have a great customer success team, and we help our customers with this, is how do you train your teams to use this AI more effectively? And we have tons and tons of examples of customers being like, oh yeah, I was initially scared of it and I used it and it's so useful. And yeah, it took me like 2 days to learn, but I'm so glad I learned it, right? And the third is trend. What we normally do is not try to isolate incidents saying, oh, one time you took a 5-minute longer break, or one time you didn't wear the safety hat for 2 seconds and that was completely, that's it, and you're out, right? We're trying to give people trends of saying, okay, this person overall, are they trending towards a more productive person, more safe person, a more helpful person in the organization, or over a period of time are they deviating away from whatever standards the company has set for themselves, right? And those trends helps people understand on both sides on how to make improvements. So those are the 3 parameters beyond data that we think of in the implementation side, which really helps our customers.
Yeah. No, I think this is a very interesting conversation, and I'm sure that you've had this many times with a lot of people. Obviously, beyond a point, it's technology, right? Anybody can use it for good means as well as this thing, and I do understand where this thing comes from. But let's talk a little more on the innovation aspect of it as well, right? One of the things that you said at the start is that you made some assumptions, and there was another AI CEO or leader that I was talking to. He said that the really successful companies always, so their assumption to knowledge ratio is greater than 1. So they assume something which is going to happen and work in that direction rather than having some kind of knowledge and assumption. So I think some of the things that you made an assumption was that the compute power is going to continue to grow, and you put your bets on it, right? What are some of the things that you are observing in the industry right now that helps you provide a direction to your company in terms of where you are headed as a company, and what are some of these assumptions that you hold to kind of better your technology, improve your processes, scale your product overall?
Yeah, I think the first thing I'm going to say is probably not going to be a huge surprise to people who are deep in the AI space or who are really implementing AI applications, is you're moving from a system of record software era where everything you did was some kind of database, right? So your Salesforce, your Twilios, not Twilios, but like Atlassian and or some kind of a tool which connected to databases and made some action happen, which is where Twilios of the world come in. To now you're getting to an era where you have to think about what you're building as applications in terms of how does it help a team or a specific set of individuals do their job, like take parts of the job and do it for them, right? Or do it much more intensely than they could humanly possibly could. So I can only watch a video for like 5 minutes because I have other things to do, but now the AI can watch 24 hours of video and give me this summary of that, right? So you start looking at really what does this person do in a day-to-day? Like how do they spend their hours, and which of those hours can you either minimize or make the output 10x? So that's one lens that all applications is getting designed to. So it's a very different, it's a product point of view, but it's what's going to happen. The second, I think, on a technology side, is understanding that I think there was this 2 years ago, a lot of people believe the models of the world are going to create all the applications of the world. And I think it's becoming, and our bet was no, application layers will stand as long as the application layers have both understanding of workflows as well as proprietary data. And today we're sitting on like multiple billions of hours of physical video data, which you can't find on YouTube, which you can't find on open sources. This goes from simple things like understanding how humans respond to each other in a factory setting. How does gravity work when some things fall? How are pallets moved? What happens when two forklifts are crossing each other? Like there's tons of these examples which we are learning and making our systems better, right? So our bet is over the next few years, people who understand the human workflows better and who have this proprietary data advantage and become really, really good at training and deploying these models will have a huge advantage, right? So from that perspective, our goal is to continue to not just get more data, but get deeper and deeper into our customers' workflows. So working with, almost it's counterintuitive, but our focus is now on not necessarily get the next 1,000 customers really, really fast, but get the next few hundred customers who are willing to work deeper with us.
Yeah.
And for higher use cases. So if a customer comes and says, I want just a basic AI layer, a veneer, it's like almost as a business, we have to say no to that and focus on these few customers who are going deeper with us, because that would allow us to build a compelling technology in a company of the future.
And agents around that.
Yeah. I mean, agents will become like cloud and mobile. It'll become like a abused word in some ways and a very generic word. Yeah. But it finally comes down to like, are you able to take something that human being needs to do and either do it much more intensely or completely eliminate the need for them to do it so they can focus on other things. Yeah.